Divine Grace, Sri Bhakti Vedanta Swami, Sri Romapada ki, Ananta Punkti Vaishnavrinda ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Lord Premanand. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 It's a long chapter. We're continuing. Canto 3. Chapter 13. We're going to be reading 39? Yeah. Namo Namaste Kila Mantra Devata. O Lord, this is the sages headed by Brahma offering prayers to Lord Varaha after he rescued the earth and killed Hiranyaksha. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead and are worshipable by universal prayers, Vedic hymns, and sacrificial ingredients. We offer our obeisances unto you. You can be realized by the pure mind, free from all visible and invisible material contamination. We offer our respectful obeisances to you as the supreme spiritual master of knowledge in devotional service. Jnanaya Vidya Gurave Namo Namaha. Purport: the qualification of bhakti or devotional service to the Lord is that the devotee should be free from all material contaminations and desires. This freedom is called vairagya, or renouncement of material desires. One who engages in devotional service to the Lord according to regulative principles is automatically freed from material desires, and in that pure state of mind, one can realize the personality of Godhead. The personality of Godhead, being situated in everyone's heart, instructs the devotee regarding pure devotional service so that he may ultimately achieve the association of the Lord. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 10:10 as follows. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami bodhiyogam kam yenamam upayanti te. To one who constantly engages in the devotional service of the Lord with faith and love, the Lord certainly gives the intelligence to achieve Him in the ultimate end. One has to conquer the mind, and one may do it by following Vedic rituals, and by performing different types of sacrifice. The ultimate end of all those performances is to attain bhakti, or the devotional service of the Lord. Without bhakti, one cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the original Personality of Godhead, or his innumerable expansions of Vishnu are the only objects of worship by all Vedic rituals and sacrificial performances. So, highlighting the importance of the bhakti principle and the connection of the bhakti principle with the process of Vedic sacrifice, with mantras, ghee, oblations, paraphernalia, rituals, and so forth and so on. we've been discussing this, the Supreme Lord is situated in such acts of sacrifice. So, Bhagavatam connects all the dots, and then you get the whole picture. Some people like this, some people like that, some people like the other thing, and they don't connect the dots because they see this or that or the other thing. So, what's the goal? What's the purpose of the sacrifice? Well, it depends on the consciousness of the performer, and it depends upon the teachings and the teacher that's guiding the performer. So, performers of rituals commonly have material wants. Right? Krishna says, Chaturvidha bhajanti mam jana sukritanorjana. I want, or I want. And depending upon their wants, they're going to see the purpose of the ritual differently. That means they'll observe the ritual, participate, their consciousness will be absorbed in, let's just assume that they have a proper person to guide the ritual, a qualified brahmana that knows procedures, unlike what we read earlier, what modern times people do. Light a fire and say a few words, and that's what they do, because everything is situated in acts of sacrifice with fire. So there's procedures and so forth. Supposing someone has a qualified person, or supposing there is a qualified person, rare to find. Supposing there is such a person, still, what's the purpose? Very similar to what Krishna says to Nanda Maharaj about the sacrifice that was being arranged for, well, he knew, but for Indra. What's the purpose? Because the reasoning is, if you do the ritual, if you don't know the purpose, you won't get the full benefit. Krishna says. And that's the fact, it's in Nectar of Instruction also. We don't neglect the vidhis, and we don't simply perform the vidhis. If you perform the vidhis, you should know what the purpose is, otherwise the benefit won't come. Full benefit won't come. Something will come. So the Bhagavatam is teaching us here, specifically, of these different types of sacrifice. So we were discussing in Bhagavad Gita, the principle of sacrifice, Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavir, Brahmatnau, Brahmanautam, etc. Then there's so many varieties of some like sacrifice this way, that way, according to the Vedas. And again, the transcendence is situated within those acts of sacrifice, but some people don't know that. They don't even know what transcendence is. It's something to achieve something. That's business. That's not transcendence. And then others, the notion of becoming one with the Supreme, or literally becoming the Supreme, becoming Brahman, or regaining a Brahmanness, becoming the absolute truth, once again. Kind of silly. But Bhagavatam is making it clear. Vedic sacrifices, there's authority invested in them. To do what? This purport is very clear. To do what is to bring one to the position of bhakti. What's that? It's very simple. Two things. Mind and body. The gross and the subtle coverings of the soul. The mind, fixed upon the personality of God. If the senses engaged in external objects, offering those external objects to the Supreme with love. Mind and body. And of course, the heart, the deep conviction intention of the living entity making such offerings. So, in one sense, the acts of we've been discussing this a little bit. The acts of sacrifice are forms of devotional service, but that kind of evolves in the course of time by the performer. In meditation, like that nice story of the Brahmin that was, as he got older, was unable to do his deity worship in fullness, so he did within his mind, and it was the same as the offering to his deity, as he burned his thumb and testing the sweet rice. So that was just within his mind, not engaging the senses, but doing the behavior without your mind being properly situated is very incomplete. And it's not easy to have the mind properly situated. And that's what this verse is saying. One has to conquer the mind. And one may do it by following the Vedic rituals and performing different types of sacrifice. That's the external part. The external part helps the internal part. Behaviors help bring the mind to a proper place and have values within the mind that you hold as you're doing prescribed duties, the behaviors. But the behaviors are to bring this clarity and purity of the mind, because, as Krishna says, if the mind isn't peaceful, how can you be happy? So the goal is, and the happiness is connecting with the Supreme. And that connecting with the Supreme consummates in bhakti. Then one can know Krishna as he really is, through bhakti, bhaktimam, avijanati. And there isn't another process. So these rituals are to bring one to that place where, with love and devotion, the mind and the body are so engaged. With love and devotion to the Supreme, mind and body, with love and devotion offering to the Supreme. Remember, this is Satya Yuga. At the very early stages of Satya Yuga, Brahma is just bringing entities into being. And chapter 13, the process of creation, and what Brahma does. So just going back to an earlier section, Shatarupa and Swami Manu have received instructions from Brahma what their duty is. You're our father, you brought us into existence. What's our duty? What are we supposed to do with this human form of life? And he gave some instructions. And so it was, yes sir. And they performed accordingly. It doesn't give the passage of time, but after passage of time, Diti and Kashyapa, son of Brahma, and Diti produced Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, and Hiranyaksha caused the earth to fall out of orbit. There's just like a big gap of time. Then the demigods go to Brahma, help. Early in creation. And he's contemplating what to do, and from his nose comes a thumb-sized Varaha who expands and rescues the earth. So this is very early. This is Satya Yuga. And the process of spiritual perfection for Satya Yuga is dhyayate, meditation. But we're hearing about Vedic sacrifices in our yesterday's discussion about Dhruva. It's also Satya Yuga, and he's doing meditation, but he's also chanting mantras. So it's not that during Satya Yuga they just meditate, no mantra chanting, no sacrifices. Or Kapila Deva, he's teaching Sankhya philosophy. So what does Sankhya philosophy have to do with achieving perfection? Because perfection is bhakti. Sankhya also leads, Sankhya leads to a process of meditation upon that which is the source of everything, and then in that meditation upon that which is the source of everything, to engage in devotional service to the source of everything. It leads to bhakti, the life of bhakti. But the doorway is meditation. On what? Sacrifice unto what? We discussed this yesterday. Remember the name of the professor, Professor Dimmock. That's the University of Chicago professor that wrote a letter of appreciation for Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. And his followers to this day, some time ago, but to this day, they resent what they feel Hare Krishna could achieve, Professor Dimmock, to sign his appreciation when he was drunk. So that's the person to follow. In any case, and his idea is not sacrifice unto, but it's just sacrifice. Because transcendence is situated in acts of sacrifice. There's different schools, and schools are run by teachers of schools, so schools of thought. So there's the Vedas, that's the authority. What do the Vedas say? That the school says, it says this, that, the other thing. So it's really important to have a proper teacher and proper teachings coming in disciplic succession, just like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, knowledge is lost. And then somebody gets something else in the name of knowledge, and Prabhupada would say, cheater. We call him this professor a cheater because he's a cheater. He doesn't know, and he's presenting as if he knows. Because how do you know? Well, not by speculative knowledge, but by descending knowledge. That's how you know. It's really easy to demonstrate it. Imperfect senses and power of reasoning are imperfect. So, aparishaya shabda pramana, that's the means of knowing. Right away, my intelligence. So this means that. That's what my intelligence says. When I was preparing for Tatra Sandarbha, I learned a lot. And one of the things that I learned had to do with the history following Shankaracharya. So the refutation from Shankaracharya refuted Buddhism, kind of, in the sense that the Vedas authority should be accepted. But what the Vedic authority says is essentially Buddhism. That's what he brought in, the authority of the Vedas. And then the subsequent Vaishnavacharyas had to refute, and they did, Shankaracharya's premises. But then the followers of Shankaracharya, I learned this from studying Jiva Goswami and his, what the function that he played in giving essentially a commentary on Vedanta Sutra without contradicting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's having said there's already a commentary on Vedanta Sutra. That is Srimad Bhagavatam. So to not contradict Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he wrote a commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, which practically, I don't know this, but scholars have said, it just follows verse by verse the statements of Vedanta Sutra. He doesn't say this is what Vedanta Sutra says, Sutra this one by number, that one by number. He just makes a statement and then supports the statement by Srimad Bhagavatam and other literature. So, before Jiva Goswami, there were followers of Shankaracharya that, I don't remember their names, but elaborate, very complicated, convoluted, touch your nose by doing this. Very indirect. And, interpretation with justification of their interpretation. Very, very elaborate, like mental gymnastics, like anything. And ordinary people can't understand it. And scholars say that's because you're weak-minded. So we go for this bhakti thing instead of, because you're weak-minded. So Jiva Goswami knew those arguments, the Shankaracharya followers and lines. And knowing what those points were, they appear in the, some people say, the Purva-paksha is the technical term. The statement, the Bhagavatam, supportive literature, but some people will object. He knew what the objections were in advance, so he would state the objections and then refute the objections. And then to the refutation of the objections, some people would say, then he would refute that. It's very, the audience that Jiva Goswami was addressing was a super scholarly audience, people that they don't exist anymore today. And that was only 500 years ago, or 450 years ago. People's scholarship has gone down. But he was addressing that audience, and the principles are embedded within his teachings, knowing what these other people say. But so very complicated, my point here is very complicated, elaborate, this means that justification of impersonalism or Mayavad philosophy, Shankara's teachings, on the authority of the Vedas. Very complicated. A whole lifetime of justifying something that's illusion. That was what their life was invested in. Very sad. But, where does that come from? It's stubborn obstinacy. Maya Pratyajnana. Their knowledge is stolen by illusion. And so they're propagating, perpetrating, spreading illusion for people that like that complicated style. There are people like that. Not ordinary people, but some people really like that. And those people become teachers, and they have their followers, and they become Professor Divik and his people. Because he's a Sanskrit scholar at a prominent university. So it's important to read Prabhupada's books carefully. And we don't have to go into a duel or sparring debate situation with impersonalists that are very involved in these impersonal teachings. Rather, minimally, we should be clear what's the role of this, what's the role of that, Vedic sacrifices, the process of meditation, the teachings of the Upanishads, at least fundamentally, to be strong inside and strengthened by this descending knowledge given by the Bhagavatam and our acharyas. And Prabhupada has really simplified the explanation. Really, he hasn't dumbed it down, he just made it really simple. So the purpose of the sacrifice, he's saying here, following Vedic rituals and by performing different types of sacrifice. What the purpose is, conquer the mind. And when those who have conquered the mind, by that conquering of the mind, one can engage in devotional service with determination, because the mind is now clear or purified. The ultimate end of all those performances is to attain bhakti, or the devotional service of the Lord. Without bhakti, one cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the original Personality of Godhead, or his innumerable expansions of Vishnu are the only objects of worship by all the Vedic rituals and sacrificial performances. So there's the whole gamut of Hinduism, and people that don't know the purpose behind this sacrifice, this deva, that devi, they don't know the purpose behind. They feel it's, we're all-encompassing warm Hindus. We can accept everybody. Om Jaya Jagadisha Hare. And if you go over here, well, you're not being inclusive. You have to be inclusive. Without understanding there's a source of everything, and that going to the source of everything is all-inclusive. It's automatically all-inclusive. But the focus is singular to the source of everything. And there's respect that goes to everything. The ant and the demigod and the daily. And your neighbor. And, Donald Trump. At least fundamentally, the soul within. Now the behavior is another thing, but respect for Sat stems from understanding the source. And one can only understand the source properly, fully, comprehensively, rather than incompletely, through devotion. So how do you get there? So these procedures are to help you get there. And it's all made very simple in this age of Kali, because this is Satya Yuga. People were far more advanced. The chanting of the holy name does this cleansing of the mind, and further, the awakening of the mood of service. Oh, energy of Krishna, please engage me in the service of the personality in Godhead. Awakening that mood of service and cleansing the mind from other things. Very simple. Very sublime. The happiness of the soul is awakened by that. Spiritual happiness. And to get there, it's a journey. It's a journey worth making. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion. Yes.
Maharaj, Hare Krishna. So, from the purport, this word kind of caught my attention. It says, one who engages in devotional service to the Lord according to the regular principle is automatically free from material desires.
There's a nice essay of Purijan Prabhu. When Prabhupada uses the word automatically, what does it mean?
Yeah.
That's your question?
Yes.
Yeah. It's not automatically in the sense of a vending machine. It's automatically in the sense of there's natural progression. Not automatically like a machine. There's a natural progression. It follows. In natural sequence, that kind of. But also into the essay. It's very thoughtful. Several pages. It's the doorway. It's like we came in through the doorway. So you walk through the doorway, you automatically you're in the temple room. But it's not. There's some effort to walk to the doorway and walk across the floor in the temple room. But that's the method of getting into the temple room. That doorway, like that. I'll send you the essay. Remind me. Yeah.
Maharaj, from the classes yesterday and last 2 days, I was thinking this universe is so complicated.
Yeah.
And Brahma had created, and because of the varieties of the people, varieties of things, so many things, you think about now, forget about the others. Today itself there are certain organizations, certain things, and I don't know how many lifetimes I have gone through, and all this to understand all this
It doesn't get simpler, it gets more complicated. It's how you progresses.
Maybe, what is that Sukruti I did? I'm thinking, to come to ISKCON and get this.
Well, probably some previous devotional service, and for sure the Sanskrit word that's used in this case is yadrichchaya. And the translation is somehow or other. Causeless mercy. What's the cause of causeless mercy? It's not, there's no cause, it's causeless. Just mercy. Well, come on, what's the cause of that mercy? Because everything has a cause, right? It's the nature of Krishna is he's merciful. Okay, Krishna's merciful. Why me? That mercy is available to everybody. You just said yes instead of no. Or maybe he's a polite way of saying no. So, just like I asked a 7-year-old, it was her birthday, and her mom said she's chanting 2 rounds a day. And I said, do you chant every day? She looked at her mom. I knew what that meant. Can you chant every day? She looked at her mom. I said, yes, no, or maybe. She looked at her mom and said, maybe. That's the point, no. I can't believe it. But I said, you're honest. That's a good quality. Try to come to. So, we just said yes. Or maybe a qualified yes, or, but not a wholehearted, but a yes. And that's all. Just from our side. So then there's some effort and there's mercy. And so it's like the sun shines everywhere. Because the sun shines. So that mercy came to us somehow or another because the Lord is merciful. And there was an instrument, and there were multiple instruments that delivered that mercy, and we said, yeah. It's the nature of the absolute truth. But there's some representative of, that's essential. Because otherwise the sun will shine and we won't even notice the sun is shining. Just maintain selfishness in the whole program of material pursuit. We take for granted everything that comes, like a selfish child. Instead of saying, wow. So, there's an instrument to remind us. And that's the Yadrichchaya, the one who's carrying bhakti, awakens bhakti. But that's part of the mercy network also. Somehow or another. Yadrichchaya. It's a nice word. Little Ramayana sharing. Twice in Valmiki Ramayana, he uses the word Yadrichchaya. And one of those times is when Mantra gets inspired to go destroy the mind of Kaikeyi. It's Yadrichchaya. The other is when Shubharnaka has this inspiration to, go after Ram and lustfully, etc., etc. Yadrichchaya. And both of them are turning points in the whole pastime, indicating Mantra was inspired by Super Soul to do what she did. Shubharnaka was inspired by Super Soul to do what she did because they were essential in the whole drama of the Lord's appearing to kill Ravana, which was the request made by the demigods, headed by Rama, inspired by the person. So that's inspired by the personality of Godhead from within the heart. Somebody showed up, and you said yes. So the instrument is necessary because that's Krishna's arrangement. He didn't just come before you and say, hey, you forgot me, come on. Let's go back to Godhead. he's not certified, but he's doing through someone because he likes. It's the system. And many people get that same, instrument, and they say no or maybe.
It's always a free will.
Yes. So why do we say yes instead of no or maybe? So that's where there's either this is one explanation is past devotional service. Bhaktivinoda Thakur expresses in a slightly different way, that is, agyata sukriti. Unknowingly we do things that are favorable for the service of the personality of Godhead. Not free will choice exactly, but just the sunshine, the mercy coming, and unknowingly we did something that was on behalf of the plan, the mission, the will of the Supreme Lord. Unknowingly we did it. Unknowingly and unknowingly and unknowingly, and then eventually it comes to knowingly. That's Bhaktivinoda Thakur's explanation. There are different acharyas that have a different way of saying, why does somebody say yes instead of no? Those are two options that our acharyas teach.
Now I'm understanding that.
That's why when we go to do book distribution in Harinam, people aren't saying yes, but they're hearing.
So now I'm understanding what is the meaning of the Bahunam Janmanam there. Vasudeva Sarva. Even that also takes, I don't know how long it takes to get the perfection, but millions of years in this.
But Jnanavan Mam, so to know Krishna and surrender to Him, that's bhakti. Anyone else? Yes. Good to see you. Oh, sick one.
I was missing seeing you. Yeah, it's not so bad. Right now I'm good.
Okay.
You see, sometimes even now, even among devotees, sometimes you see the tendency to get attracted towards some additional rituals. Some tendency to be attracted to performing additional rituals other than just to be satisfied with chanting of the holy names.
Additional which things?
Rituals.
Rituals.
Yeah. Because you were mentioning that if
we talked about this yesterday.
You said that you mentioned that if you know the purpose behind the rituals, it is okay. But even if you know the purpose behind the rituals, but is it necessary in the times in which we are living now?
No, but it's not a no either. It's not a you're off in the ditch. There are some people that like those things, and it's fine, provided it's under authority with the right purpose. Fine. Here's a little simple example. When I mentioned it yesterday, for a whole month at the Mayapur Academy, they teach rituals according to Hari Bhakti Vilas. Now, when Prabhupada did deity installations, or when Prabhupada did initiations, or when Prabhupada did this or that, it was really simple. And then in this Mayapur Academy, they teach something very involved. Now, it's not like you can't go back to Godhead if you don't know those things. Or if you do those things, you can't go back to Godhead. But it's Gaudiya Vaishnava procedure. And it can be made very simple, just like deity worship in the home. It can be really simple. And it can be more elaborate. It can be very, very elaborate. And people that like the elaborate, there's the procedure. You should know the procedure properly. and the purpose behind the procedure, not just be fastidiously attached to the procedure. The world is made up of all kinds of modes of nature and inclinations, good and karma. So they're like music. It's a hard, very simple. And then some people like, like, I don't know if you become familiar a little bit with people that take training in. Govinda was taking training in classic teachings in music, and it's really involved. And it shows up in some of what he does, but you can chant Hare Krishna without all of that, or you can learn all of that, and it enhances the kirtan, or art, or architecture, or vastu, or astronomy and astrology. Where's the limit? And so the Vedas have that knowledge of all those things. And what's the one thing for all those things is to know who you are and connect with the personality of Godhead. That means let go of who you aren't and be absorbed in who you are. That is your relationship with the personality of Godhead, and serve him, then you can know who he is. You can become a whole person with your faculties according to guna and karma, the package that you're in. It's a submission, it's the Sharanagati principle. Sarva-dharma parivyaja mamekam sharanam vraja. Go ahead.
So those are all those, whether it is classical music or all these rituals that we see, they are all part of the Vedic culture. And yet, we are taught to, to focus on the Yuga Dharma, which is the chanting of the holy names. And so, like when you are doing all these things, like a person does it and another person does it, like in the whole, a whole bunch of people takes up these type of activities, and then you are trying to bring them to the focus of the holy name.
Yes.
And they're going.
Yes.
So, is that helpful?
It's not harmful. It depends on if the focus is there or not. Now, the tendency is to be unfocused. That's the material tendency. And to do something that's distracting because of the lack of focus. So the risk is lack of focus. But there's lack of focus risk if someone is told, just do this one thing and you can't do other things because it's just this one thing. They're going to check out because, they're not ready to be focused like that. So there's risk and there's risk.
But there is always variety.
Yeah, there's always variety. And so the training starts, the real ideal training starts from childhood. Those of you that are parents, training starts from childhood, and invest in the child the principle. And then so the future generations that have received that principle, and then the university is going to be there anyway because there's diversity. But if the essential is there and the essential doesn't get lost, then Vedic culture will manifest in a proper way instead of the improper way. So our mission is create functionality, and that displaces dysfunctionality. Grow the functionality with core, with proper principle. That was the emphasis from yesterday evening with Suniti. She was just teaching principle. So parenting, or becoming a teacher, or becoming a guru, becoming a head of state, or becoming whatever, where there's persons that are looking up to you, stay focused on principle within that diversity of the audiences that we're faced. And so that a leader, a person who's guiding others, has to be properly based in principle. They have to know what principle is and live by it. And then see in a discriminating manner how to impart that, just like Narada did with Dhruva. You know, he tested him and he was like, I'm not budging. So then he gave him the means to facilitate that core, which provided, anyway. So those who are in a leadership position must see to core principles. They must live by them and see to them, and allowing within, you know, certain boundaries, the diversity to develop with, you know, with the primary caution of making sure that the principle is at the center, the core is at the center. And there's always course correction and people heading it for the ditch and all kinds of things. So leaders have to have that capacity to see that and remind people and do what is needful to bring things back to that core. And it's not easy. It's a lot of effort required, a lot of purity, a lot of strength. Anything else? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. This is a sensitive question. First of all, I want to ask for forgiveness from all my God brothers. In this temple congregation, I feel very loved and cared, and all my God brothers, God sisters are taking care of me very well. But this question is sensitive because not everybody is at the same understanding or level. We are all under the shower. I understand that, and everybody is going through their own level of purification stages, right? So, if in Bhagavad Gita 9.30 it says, even if one commits abominable action, most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination.
Yeah.
So my question is from two different sides. First one is when we are that person who is engaged in abominable action, because we fallen because of Maya or some impurity. How to pray? Of course we do come to that realization, otherwise we will not even know, right? How do we pray to Krishna to?
Well, it depends on the severity of the bad behavior. But there are two essences. They're both coming from a position of humility. I'm submitting, of course Krishna already knows, but I'm submitting to you, I've made this mistake. And even, you know, give an adjective, abominable mistake. I've made this mistake, and I have deep regret. So you're acknowledging before Krishna, you know, your state of consciousness or your heart. Please, so then the request, that's the humility and the request. Please keep me under your shelter so that I can become purified from this mistake and any tendencies in the future for other mistakes. I commit to you to not make this mistake, but I need your strength. So it's a request, humility and request.
My second question will be from a victim's point.
From which?
Victim's point of view. So if both are Vaishnavas, like the person doing the abominable act is a Vaishnava, and the person who is affected by that act is also a Vaishnava. From the victim's point of view, how do we understand that situation or pray to come out of, you know?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
From the victim's point of view.
The victim's point of view. Okay. The person that's on the receiving end of the bad action. How do we pray for them? That's your question?
How do we handle that?
How do you handle the victim? The dynamic of what's going on with
If
the
I
victim?
am the victim, how do I take care of it?
Oh, if you're the victim, how do you handle being the victim?
Right.
That's your question. Well, again, it depends, but there's fundamental principles, and that is, we discussed yesterday evening. What's that card say? What did it say? You were there last night.
Yes, I know.
So you remember?
No one can harm us unless we
Unless we let them.
unless we want to harm ourselves.
Unless we want. So you're under. If you're at the receiving end of there's the perpetrator, there's the victim, and I'm the victim, and there's Krishna. Krishna's protection is there. Under all circumstances. In principle. Krishna's protection. So who can harm you? You're the victim. Who can harm you? So you take different examples. Here's Haridas Thakur. You can cut my body into little pieces. I'm going to keep chanting Hare Krishna. And that is to say, it's coming from the soul. So it's not the temporal, it's from the soul. It's not circumstantial, it's of the soul. That you can't take away. It's like, Socrates saying, you can kill me, but first you have to catch me. You can try to kill me, but first you have to catch me. That's the spiritual conception of who we are. So no one can harm you. But, there's the body and there's the mind, and then the body can feel pain and hurt, and the mind can feel pain and hurt, but they can't touch you. So now, once that's a spiritual conception. That's easier said than done. But that's a spiritual conception. You're protected by your relationship with Krishna. Don't deviate from your relationship with Krishna because of this thing, that thing, the other thing. That's secure because of your submission and service. That's secure. That's you. Then there's this hurtful thing. You're the victim of some hurt. So then you can, depending upon your consciousness, you can consider what's appropriate. One of the nice stories I like very much, that this is way beyond our capacity, but Jayadev Goswami, there was an attempted murder by some bandits. They wanted some money because he had gone speaking Gita Govinda to have a worship of his deity for Janmashtami, Radha Madhava, and they plundered him and threw him to the bottom of a well. And he saw them later, the king rescued him. He saw them later at a yagya that was being performed by the king. And his mentality was, these men are poor, so he advised the king to give them special remuneration because they're poor, they need, they have a need. So there wasn't resentment or, now you're the king, get him. It wasn't to get back. So that's Jayadev. So, we're not Jayadev, but you wish well for the perpetrator. Whatever it is that caused the perpetrator to do this bad act that you're the victim of, may Krishna from within their heart help them become free from that, whatever it is that caused them to do this bad thing. Another nice example that I have referred to many times was, you've been to Gitanagari? You've been to Gitanagari. So Gitanagari is in Amish country, and it happened one summer, a couple summers ago. Some kids were driving by in a car and shot two teenage girls, dead.
I remember the story.
Sure. So the village elder gathered everybody first thing to the place of worship to pray to God to forgive the perpetrators. And they're because the value that they say they should live by, and they do live by, in this case they did, that they're wishing well for all living entities, including the perpetrators. Now that's high, but that's a value that they live by. And connecting those perpetrator, or a perpetrator, or plural, to God's mercy. may that person be the recipient of Krishna's mercy. That's a fantastic response.
I have one more question. So, when we are not at that level, but I did pray to Krishna to forgive.
Yeah.
And try to help myself to get over that negative feeling. But when we run into this, because we lose trust.
Because of?
Because of whatever that one abominable act, we lose trust in that person, and until they change or until we see a change in the other person, we might not be able to trust them again. So whenever we run into them again, like the fear of, oh my God, it might happen again, or of course Krishna, we do depend on Krishna, but we are not at a level where we can see other person as a soul.
But what you're just describing is the mind going into reactive space, which was exactly last night's message. Try to don't go into a reactive space. You may want to instead keep a distance from that person. And if that person does it again, you know that you're protected because that person can't hurt you. But you know, it's not good for that person to do it again. It's not good for your mind that that person does it again either.
So to give that message to the person, like, if we don't, then they will think it's okay and they might continue.
So use your intelligence. I'm going to take the microphone away from you shortly. Use your intelligence how to prevent that from happening. No, it may not be something that you do immediately. No, let's just say you want to see that not just it doesn't happen again to you, but if that perpetrator gets away with it, they may feel they can do it to anybody and anybody at any time circumstance. So you bring that to the attention of some authority. And that's an option. It's not like that's the cure, but that's an option of behavior. You know, ultimately the authority is Krishna. But you know, there may be some administrative person, a Kshatriya person, whose duty it is to deliver from harm. That's what Kshatriya means. So you put the Kshatriya business in the hand of the Kshatriya. And you go about your business, which isn't to be a Kshatriya. Whatever your business is. You continue performing your prescribed duties and put in the hand of the Kshatriya. So it's Kali Yuga, and Kshatriyas can be overwhelmed, so they may be discriminating which matters they address and they don't address. That's another, you know, that's in their hand. But your duty, anyway, it's involved. There's some discrimination required. Some intelligence is what drives discrimination. But you won't access intelligence and discrimination if your mind is all like, fearful. If you don't feel protected ultimately by Krishna. So to the degree that you can feel ultimately protected by Krishna, but you want to see this perpetrator not do the same thing with other people or yourself, then you can be discriminating what is appropriate. You make a little brainstorm list of both of things out and then see what's left and then you choose one. That's the standard procedure. It may take some time. You may want to consult with somebody that's wise and not like, yeah, let's get that person, but you know, thinking in higher principle. So your intelligence can be guided by another's more detached intelligence.
Sometimes
This is the last time.
Right. I promise I will not go on more about this.
Sometimes in Vaishnava community, when we are practicing Krishna consciousness, it might look like she's complaining a lot.
They look like what?
It might look like she's complaining a lot.
Complaining a lot.
Or it might look like, you know, fault finding other people. It might be like, we might think, oh, I shouldn't be talking about this, or I shouldn't be coming up with. So there's a line we have to draw, I think.
Well, so you have to be discriminating. You don't want to be fault-finding, you don't want to be perceived as fault-finding. And you'd like to be, you know, Krishna's instrument. You have to be a little, you know, discriminating how to best be Krishna's instrument in situations that, you know, because sometimes things rise and they fall. And then they rise and then they fall. And then it's normal and then they rise again. So it's just, you've been around for a few years, so you know, you understand, I mean, you're, whatever your age is, you've been through lessons of life. So the bhakti principle helps you make your discriminations in terms of what's going to help you get to Krishna, and with that primary purpose in mind, help others get to Krishna. That's the goal. And that when you have that goal, you stay moving towards that goal, fixed towards that goal. Your intelligence and discriminating power will become stronger. And less when your mind is swayed by, oh, what if and what if and what if. Yada, yada, yada. Mind's chatter. Then you can't chant properly because the mind is chattering. You can't take shelter properly. You can't do anything properly. You can't do your duties properly. It's just so. Take shelter.
Thank you so much, Maharaja.
It's, you know, counseling. One more question? Anyone? Okay. You have?
Just a follow-up to Mataji's, Prema Mataji's question, Maharaja, about the rituals.
About rituals.
Yeah. I'm trying to understand, like, when the rituals are given in our discipling line, that's something that we value and it assists in bhakti. And when we see that the rituals that sometimes being followed are from family tradition and this and that, and still that's being held at an equivalent level to the rituals that are given in our Krishna consciousness process, that kind of like bothers me a little bit. I just want to understand how to take it.
How to take it? You know, these kinds of questions, the first thing that I say is, it depends. It's like, here's a little example. We invite people to come to gatherings and they're carrying their Bhagavad Gita. They sit down, the first thing you do is put their Bhagavad Gita on the floor. So what are you going to do about that? You put the Bhagavad Gita on the floor. Depends. Depends. Sometimes with the thing, totally new people, you don't say anything at all. You leave the Bhagavad Gita on the floor. Because they won't understand if you even gently, politely pick up the Bhagavad Gita. And you don't, you know, whatever it is, the behavior may not be understood or may be resented, or you people, and so it depends. But at a certain point in time, you let them know. With an explanation why, here's a practice that we observe. So, taking that same principle and applying it to your question, it depends. I know of an example where somebody that's now in a high leadership position, at one point in time, because of how he grew up, he was a Sai Baba worshipper. And then he met devotees. And over there was Sai Baba worship, and over here was Krishna worship. No. He was starting to get a sense, but it took a while. And in course of time, that person understanding Krishna's position and Sai Baba's position, the worship of Sai Baba subsided. But there were different approaches. I won't say who, but one sannyasi went into the man's home, saw Sai Baba's picture on the altar, and took the picture off the altar, put it in his bag, and the wife was crying, went to the kitchen, was crying, and he left the house with the picture in his bag. And somebody that understood what was going on with the parents, the host, asked, can I have the picture? And he wants the picture back. He wouldn't give the picture back. So he went away from Krishna consciousness for some time because he was so hurt. But then, because of strong relationships with different devotees, we'd say more mature, but different approach devotees, he's now in a very clear initiated devotee, and he's in a leadership position. He's in a president position. He's very clear. So it depends. What's important is how we help that person that has some equivalating tendency, this and that are fine, to gradually, appropriately understand. Now some people, they don't like the gradual, they want to chop. And some people can chop, and some people can't. So it depends. Some people will accept being chopped, some people can't. Personally, I favor the Bhaktivinoda Thakur approach. Little steps in the right direction approach. Humble persuasion approach. Rather than the chopping approach. Based upon the relationship with the relationship of trust. Now, just a little comment again, that with Western millennials, the chopping approach is illusory. It takes a lot of patience and a lot of building of trust and gradual understanding of what's what. For a variety of reasons. And so there's not so much rituals involved with young Western people. There's other things involved with young Western people, and how do you address those things? It's different but similar. Okay, Srila Prabhupada.